It's my birthday and let's try something new. I'm just gonna talk into the camera. To be honest, I promised myself and you that I'm gonna upload a video every day. And I realized editing takes so much time. Although I will continue, brush up my editing techniques, I don't know if I can continue the way I edit every day. It's still very time consuming for me. And I'm starting to risk breaking my promise. Talking about risk, why don't we talk about risk today? So what is a risk? Risk is something that we think will suffer or lose by doing or not doing something. But does it really exist? I decided to go to the States when I was 15. I remember at age 13, I was taking a philosophy course. Here's a little Korean education background for you. So the chapter was about Socrates and how he died obeying the law. So my question to the teacher was, hey, excuse me, I don't understand why. And she says, just memorize it. So I said, there's nothing to memorize. It's already here, but I want to know why. And she told me, get out of the class immediately. So I was sent to the principal's office and it wasn't good. I was asking too many questions. So I went back home that day, told my dad. He studied at University of Miami, and he always bragged about how the American education system is all about discussion, and there's no such a thing as bad questions. But it wasn't so in Korea. I wasn't allowed to ask questions, and I have too many questions. So I told my dad, Dad, send me to the States. I can't study like this. And he told me it was too risky. He said when I was old enough to go to college, then he would allow me to go to the States. But I said, okay, that's fine. Then I'll wait until then to study. So somehow I convinced my dad and had about a year preparation time and went to the States. I basically dropped everything that I knew and just went to the States. Because it was a decision that I made, I became a pretty serious student because I thought I made this decision against my parents' will, that if I fail here, I have nowhere to go. And at the time, I barely spoke any English. So I think that has to be one of the best decisions I had ever made, at least up to that point. Because I took the risk, I was being responsible. I worked so hard, just try to make it. And I went to college. And somehow, to make the long story short, I auditioned for this one band at Berklee School of Music in Boston. Got the part. We start to record. And they told me that we have a contract ready to sign in Korea. So I quit. I asked for a leave of absence from my college and flew over to Korea. Again, I risked everything. My parents were like, it's your life. Good luck, dude. I think that was the moment my parents stopped giving me allowances. I was all on my own. And when we got to Korea, the band broke up. And all the other members are, students at Berklee School of Music. And at the time, if you studied at Berklee School of Music and came back to Korea, you are the most wanted musicians in Korea. So all of them somehow had their role in the music industry. And here I was, an art student who practically dropped out of school to pursue this, was left alone with nothing. So I decided to enroll to a jazz academy in Korea, and I had to start making money. And By that time, my English was a little bit better than how I started when I was 15. So the easiest way to make money was to teach English. And I was doing translation works. And at one point, I was making a lot of money. At age, 20, 21, 22, some month I was making close to 10,000 a month. And all those money was to gain access to my education and some equipment that I needed to write songs. But when you are in your early 20s, young and hot, with a lot of cash in your hand, going to school is the last thing you think of. So I spent it all. Music was moving away from my life. And I had a lot of fun. I admit, I had a lot of fun. But I quickly learned that your goal should never be money, because money will eventually consume you. After going through some employment, I decided that I want to start my own business. So I started off with a small design company and a trading company separately. And I was doing just fine. It seemed like every time I took the risk, the reward was there. I was becoming a strong person, and my confidence grew, and I felt like I was invincible. And even when I got married, I had a decent trading deal that I didn't really have to work that hard. I already made some connections, and all I had to do was make some phone calls here and there. And I was working out of my own apartment, and I was getting too comfortable. I was living with my wife, so we were still in our honeymoon phase. Everything was perfect. But one day I got bored, and also a little bit worried, and thought maybe I should be doing something more. So my wife was pregnant at the time, and the sense of responsibility started to grow on me. So I asked my wife, "Hey, honey, maybe I should go get a job. Maybe I can apply to big corporations and, get a decent salary and have a comfortable life." I still cannot forget what she told me. She says, "Honey, let's think about the worst case scenario. Let's say we have no connections. All of our family members somehow disappeared. All of our friends all disappeared. It's just you and me. What are we going to do?" And we realized if both of us went out and taught English and did some translation works, and I do some design work at the same time, worst case scenario, we would be making 10,000 a month if we both had to work very hard. That was the worst case scenario for us. And even if I had to work alone, we could have easily be earning anywhere from 6,000 to 7,000 a month. So my wife said, if that's the worst case scenario for us, then why don't you go out and do whatever you want and see if that works? Because if it doesn't, that's our worst case scenario is still a pretty good living. So I continued doing all these different trading business, and eventually started my gallery. And that became my full-time thing. And I was going around studios all over Korea, all over the world, trying to find the new talents. And, we quickly became this hot, young and energetic gallery that represents fresh, young, emerging artists. We were featured in all the magazines and newspapers, and, we were doing really well. Until something happened. Maybe we can talk about this in a later time in detail. But let's just say that we got into trouble. We started to get investigated by the government. We became the target. We're all over the news, but for the wrong reasons. And my life was miserable. Worst of all, this was a political thing. And the prosecutors are trying to make my business into some kind of a money laundering venture. And for 3 years, we're being investigated, and I was spending more time with the lawyers than artists. I did everything in my power to keep our boat floating, But my spirit for promoting art was drowning. This started almost 10 years ago now. Until this day, I have to say, I'm not so sure if I fully recovered. My entrepreneurial spirit has long been forgotten. And I found myself just trying to stay alive. After living like that for a number of years, I wasn't so motivated. And when you're not motivated, it's very difficult to keep yourself happy. But having gone through what your own government can do to you and how the media so wrongly portrays what really goes on inside, I had lost faith in everything. And I felt like I had to hide away. And there came this era of social media. Everybody was exposing everything. Everybody was sharing everything. Facebook, well, needless to say. But all those times I stayed away because I knew when the wrong kind of people have hold of your informations, they can edit it and publish it and make you the bad guy very easily and permanently. So partially because I'm scared, but also to protect my families and my own life, I kept myself as far as possible away from all social medias. Being the curious George I am, I was keeping myself informed with all the new technologies, only to grow my fear of how we are going to have no privacy. So why am I vlogging now and putting my contents up on YouTube? Well, I realize there's no way out of this. I cannot hide no longer. In fact, there's no place to hide. And if I have to fight the fight, I better go head to head. Is there a risk? Well, I have 3 children and a beautiful wife. That's about it, if I can call it that. But as my children are getting older, I started to talk to my wife about how to educate them. I truly believe leaving them alone in order to help them be more independent, rather than spoon-feeding them everything. I hope that they will learn what they can do and cannot do on their own and somehow find the right balance to really have total control of their life as they are, however they fit into the society. And I've been arguing this point to my wife for years now. But I realize if I truly believe this, then I truly have no risk. Because, sons, you're on your own. And I don't mean to say that I'm staying away from their lives. And I'm not here to say that I'm not going to support their educations. I'm here, and I will be as long as possible. But if my sole purpose of living is to protect them, then they will never see the true nature of this jungle. And by me trying to play safe in this jungle, I'm taking away their opportunities to see the truth and face reality. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I do this with the hope. If I'm leaving the right records and I have the right type of supports, that might be the only way to control my own stories. It's like my colleagues in the art world. There were maybe about 200 of us of similar age group experiences. We all worked hard, but very quickly that number came down to 100. And within 5 years, there was less than 50 of us left. And after 7 years, maybe 20 of us. And I have to say, after 10 years, there are only less than 10 of us who are still holding a meaningful position in the art world. And guess what? We've known each other for 10 plus years. We've known each other's ins and outs for practically our entire career. And that was one of the things that I learned going through this public catastrophe. Media was saying terrible things about me. Many people stopped dealing with me. But all these colleagues that I've been working for so long, because we had built the trust over the years and proved each other through years of works, those relationships endured. And with the same logic, if I continue to do the right thing with this channel, and when enough time goes by, it'll become more difficult for anybody to jump in and manipulate my stories. From time to time, I go to colleges and give lectures on creativity. And to make my long lecture short, I always say the most creative stories are the ones you tell about yourself. All of us were born unique. All of us are original. And we all have something to offer to all of us. And I can tell you, I'm sharing mine not because I'm special, but because I hope some people will find inspiration in my stories. I hope some people will find comfort. And I hope some people will find courage to share theirs with the rest of us.